Hey guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So this is video number 2 in my end of the year series. And so the first video that I already have out there and available to you guys is all of the books that I have DNF'd in 2024. So if you guys are interested in the books that I just could not finish, then I will post the link down in the description so that you guys can check out that video if you want to hear about those books. But today we are going to be talking about my most surprising reads for 2024. So what I consider a surprising read is any book that I wasn't necessarily really like anticipating, and it just turned out to be a surprising read. Now I do have one book in here that I was anticipating, but I didn't really have high hopes because other people didn't really seem to like it, but I did. But we'll get there. So again, these are all of the books that I found surprisingly good, and these are books that I would definitely recommend to you guys. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So the first book I have here is Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. This is a adult horror. So I was nervous to pick this up because I had heard a lot of mixed to negative reviews about this one, and it was on my shelf for a little while, but I decided to pick it up and I absolutely love this one. I gave this one 4 stars. So in this, we're following this paranormal investigative team, and they are going to do like their episode 13. They work for like a TV show, and they're going to go film episode 13 at like this psychiatric hospital, and of course some spooky things begin to happen. The interesting thing about this book is that it is completely told in mixed media. So we have their journal entries, we have emails, text messages, like their daily logs, transcripts of like the show. It's all mixed media, and that's a really big selling point for me with books, is because I love how stories can be told that way. So I really like the format of this. I also really liked the characters in this one because we have a really different type of group here. Some of the characters really believe in the work that they're doing. Some of them are like really scientific. They want to have like scientific explanations for everything that they witness. We also have this one character who was hilarious. She was just like an actor, and she was just hired basically to just kind of go around with this crew and just add like a different element. I absolutely loved her because she was kind of like skeptical. So the reason why I did not give this one 5 stars is because I wish the horror bits hit a little harder for me. I did not find myself being scared at all, but I will say that I was highly entertained. Some people recommend listening to this on audio. I did not do the audio. I heard it was, full cast narration. Maybe at some point I will go back and listen to the audio just because I enjoyed this one so much, but I just read it physically. It did not hinder my reading experience whatsoever. I really just enjoyed this book, and if you are like me and you were hesitant to pick this up, I would say go ahead and give it a try. It might surprise you, but I really enjoyed this one. Next up we have is The Fury by Alex Michaelides. This is the one that I was like really anticipating for this year, but I was hesitant to pick it up because I had not heard good things about it. I, however, enjoyed this. I did listen to this one on audio, and I listened to the audio all in one day. And that is not something that I typically do, but I definitely binged this entire book. So in this one, we are following this group of like friends, and one of them is like an ex-movie star, and so they decide that they want to go on vacation. So they go vacation on like this Greek island, and someone ends up dead. This book took a turn. There were things happening in here that I just absolutely did not see coming. I think the problem that most people have with this is just how it was told. This ex-movie star, we are actually following her friend. I can't remember if this friend like actually works for her or not, but we're following her friend. He is telling the story of what happened on this island to us, and he does this thing where like he's breaking the fourth wall and he's literally talking directly to you. Now, for some people, they really enjoy that. I don't read too many books like that. So for this one, it just really worked. I enjoyed how the story was being told. I could see why it wouldn't work for other people. And there's like a lot of back and forth between what's happening currently and then the events like leading up to how they got on this island. I actually really enjoyed that. I enjoyed some of the reveals. I enjoyed the twist. However, I gave this one 4 stars. Still, of course, obviously I really enjoyed it, but the ending, I was a little confused. I still don't really know what happened, but it doesn't even matter because I liked everything leading up into the end. This has like unreliable narrator. I don't know. I really enjoyed this book and I am anticipating the next book from this author. So then the next book that I have here is The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. I picked this up because I had started hearing some good reviews from obviously other people, and the premise of this just sounded really good. So in this, we are following lots of characters, but everybody in the US, I can't remember at first if it was everybody in the US wakes up to these boxes, and inside the box is a string, and everybody's string is a different length. And in the beginning, nobody really knows what this means. Nobody knows why they received these boxes. Nobody knows the significance of the strings. But as the story progresses, you learn that the length of the string represents how long each person is going to live. And of course, that causes a lot of chaos within the world. So we're following these characters. All of these characters are in different situations. They have different lengths of string, and we're basically following them as they are determining how they are going to deal with this current situation. Some of them are concerned about the relationships that they have because one person has a long string, another one has a short string. Some of them are concerned about their job because now that everybody has received these strings, the government is heavily involved and they're trying to determine like, should short stringers or long stringers do certain jobs? And so that comes into play with certain characters. We're also following some characters that are part of the government. I think one of the characters is like running for president, I think. And some of their ideas about how they should deal with the strings is a big part of like their campaign. We are also following some of these characters who have joined like support groups. Support groups for like short stringers have been implemented so that they can deal with like the last few years, days of their life. So I just really liked the idea, and I actually liked following all of these characters with all of their different situations. And for me, this is a terrifying situation because I don't think I want to know how long I had to live. And that's the thing with like these characters is you're trying to figure out how do you live your life? Like when you know that you have a long string, you can live comfortably, but then when you have a short string, like, how do you live? Like, how do you go on? Are you just living just to get to, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's a weird situation. It's a situation that I would not want to ever find myself in. And I just really enjoyed this. I am really looking forward to see what else this author comes up with next because this was fantastic. The next 2 books that I'm going to talk about, I don't have physical copies of them just because I read them as ARCs from NetGalley. So the first one is Darling Girls by Sally Hempworth. This is I would say an adult mystery. So this is my second book by this author. The first one that I read was A Soulmate, and I think I read it like the year before and I thought it was fine. Not the best book that I've ever read, not the worst, it was okay. This one, however, I really enjoyed this. I also gave this one 4 stars. All of these books that I'm going to talk about, I gave 4 stars except for one. In this, we are following these 3 characters. They grew up together in a foster home, so they're basically like foster sisters. And so one day they are approached by this detective that tells them that in their old foster home, there were some human remains that were found. And so now these sisters are like being investigated to see if they know or had any involvement in regards to these human remains. And so as the story goes on, we get POVs from each of these characters, and it also flashes back to when they were living at this foster home, and they did not have the best upbringing. We get a lot of detail into what happened at this foster home. And I just felt for these characters so much. I kind of feel like Sally Hempworth, there's always a mystery. And I'm saying this like I've read a lot of her books. I've only read 2. But in the 2 that I've read, it always seems like there is a mystery, but it's more character focused. And we're following these 3 sisters, and we're seeing how the life at their foster home has like contributed to how they are living now. And then just the scenes with them at this foster home. And they had like a terrible foster mother. I believe her name was Mrs. Fairchild. I will never forget that because that lady was horrible. And we're seeing just the torment that they went through. And I liked kind of like the twist in regards to like what was happening. I don't know. I really enjoyed this story, and I am really looking forward to picking up something else from this author. I do have one of their like older books on my TBR, so hopefully I can get to that sometime in the next year. But I really had a good time with this one. The other arc that I had received from NetGalley, this one I absolutely adored as well, but for different reasons. So this is How to Age Disgracefully by Claire Pooley. I would say this is just a fiction story. So in this one, we are following these elderly characters. They are part of a like a community center, and they are a part of like this senior citizen group. And so at a certain point in the story, the person that is like running this group, they find out that the community center might get closed down. And so everybody that's a part of this community center, so it's not just a senior citizen group, there's like a nursery, there's like a lot of other groups within this community center. They all come together so they can put on this play to hopefully save the center. I loved the characters in this because, like I said, we are following senior citizens, and let me tell you, these characters were hilarious. One of the characters, they like to steal a lot. Another character is like, she used to be a con artist. Another one is like really eccentric. I don't know. This was a really eclectic group of characters, and I loved following them. The entire time that I was reading this, I just had like a huge smile on my face. And I think I mentioned this in like another video. I'm a hard sell for anything that is like humorous. It takes a lot to make me laugh. In this one, I just found myself laughing out loud. I have not heard too many people talk about this book, and I think more people should. If you are just looking for something different, something outside of what you normally read, or you're just looking for something that's like lighthearted, heartwarming, humorous, I would definitely suggest picking up this book, and I want to read more from this author. The next book that I have here is People Person by Candace Carty Williams. This is I'm gonna say it's fiction, but there are like some mysterious elements to this as well. You might be familiar with this author because she wrote Queenie. The year that I read Queenie, it was in my top books of that year. Adored that story, adored the main character. And that book is now a TV show on Hulu. But in this story, we are following these group of like half siblings, and the main one that we're following, her name is Dimple. And so one day, Dimple finds herself in a situation where she has to call in her half siblings for help. Now that's a big deal because these siblings have not grown up close. Their father basically was a rolling stone. He was out here having children with any and everybody, and they just never grew up close. However, they all came together to help Dimple, even though some of them did not want to. So this just really talked a lot about the power of family, how people are affected by having like an absentee father. We're watching these siblings as they're like slowly getting closer. We're watching the effects that this father had on each of them, because even though he wasn't around when they were younger, he seems to be more present now, but he's not any better of a father than he was when he was missing. So we get to watch how this has affected each of these siblings. And I just liked how all of these siblings really had different personalities. Now, like I said, we are following the main sibling, Dimple, and she was so annoying. She is very insecure. She's like an up and coming or she's trying to be like an up and coming influencer, and it's not really working out that well for her. And she just complains a lot. She's just annoying, but her father being absent in her life affected her way more than it seemed to have affected the other siblings. I thought this was a really good story. I was surprised by it because I have not seen a lot of people talk about it, and the few reviews that I have like seen out there, they haven't really been as positive, but I really enjoyed this. I thought that at times this story was also kind of funny. I think the situation that Dimple was in was hilarious. I don't think it's supposed to be that funny, but that is not what I thought this book was going to be about, and that it went in a direction that I did not think it was going to go in, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely looking forward to more books from this author. Next up, we have The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise because I have read another book from this author, Ring Shout, that I really enjoyed. I read that a few years ago. I really enjoyed that one. So I should not be as surprised as I was, but I did really enjoy this one. This is a adult fantasy. So we're following this assassin who's a part of the Dead Cattail Assassins, and basically she's dead and she came back to life as an assassin. That sounds really weird the way that I'm describing that, but that's essentially what happened. And so she works based off of contracts. And so she gets this contract that she has to go and kill this girl. But when she goes to try to kill her, she realizes that this girl is like a younger version of herself. And then the story just kind of takes off from there. This is another story that I just thought was funny. I don't know, I'm on like a funny kick, I guess. I thought parts of this were really funny. I like the action. This is very short, and it did a lot in a short amount of time, and it felt like a fully fleshed out story, which sometimes can be hard to do when you don't have a lot of pages to do it in. And I think P. Djeli Clark is great at writing shorter stories. I liked the idea of the Dead Cattail Assassins. Like I said, I liked all of the action. I liked the banter between our main character and this other girl that she was supposed to kill. At some point, they kind of like come together to try to figure out what exactly is going on. There's also another character in here that I really liked. That is the one that gives our main character her contracts. He's not in it a lot, but when he is, I also liked the banter between them. I liked how this wrapped up. I like this story. This is one of those that, again, I would highly recommend, especially if you are a fan of P. Djeli Clark. I can't wait to read more from this author. I do have another short story from him that I have on my TBR. Again, hopefully it's something that I can get to next year. The next one that I have is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is a adult mystery, and I was not sure how I was going to feel about this, especially because it seems like when I start to see a lot of hype for books, by the time I get to it, I don't like it as much as everybody else did. But I really enjoyed this one. And the longer that this book has been out, the more mixed reviews I have seen for it, and I can understand why. So in this, we're following this woman, and like years ago, there was an incident that took place and her best friend was murdered. This deals with like the famous amnesia trope, and now this woman has no recollection of what happened that night. And so she's moved away from her town because at the time, everybody assumed that she was the one that had murdered her best friend, but there was no proof. So she moved away to start over again. But her grandmother, who was an excellent character, her grandmother talks her into coming back to town. And when she gets to town, there is this podcaster that is looking into this crime. I don't think that this did anything new, but I really like podcast elements. I'm a sucker for those, especially when the podcast element makes sense and it is something that is helping move the story forward. I also listen to this on audio. Anytime there's like a podcast element, I try to listen to them on audio so I can get the full experience. And this did not disappoint. It had like the music. It sounded like a podcast. I also liked our main character. So she has this thing that she's in like therapy for, where she will have these interactions with people and she will want to harm them. So she's trying to get help with that. Her grandmother is hilarious. And I don't know. I really like the characters in this one. Again, the mystery wasn't really the selling point for me. It was fine, but I overall just had a good time with this. The last book that I have here that was a surprise, this is actually a nonfiction. I'm excited to have a nonfiction on like one of my lists. I've been trying to read a lot more nonfiction. I started off really good in the beginning of the year, and then I haven't touched a nonfiction since. But that's okay. So this is While You Were Out, an intimate family portrait of mental illness in an era of silence by Meg Kissinger. Basically, what she is talking about in this book is mental illness within her own family. So she grew up with a lot of siblings. It was like 6 or 7 of them. It was a lot of them. They all started to have signs of some sort of mental illness by the time they were like in their early 20s. And it seemed to happen at the same time for each of them. And one of their parents also suffered from mental illness. So she's just describing what her life was like dealing with this within her family. Unfortunately, I know one for sure. I think maybe 2 people in her family had committed suicide, which was very heartbreaking to see. And she ends up becoming the one that's telling the story. She ends up becoming a journalist. And the first half of the story is her telling us about her upbringing and her siblings and how they were battling with their mental illness. But then the second half of the story is her, and she's doing a lot of work with looking into the mental health care system, pointing out all of its flaws, telling the stories of other people that she has interviewed and how the system has failed them and how it basically failed, their family members. This was just a really, really eye-opening story. And I'm always just curious with any story that's dealing with like mental illness and how people are responding to it, how it's like affecting their day-to-day life. And I think she did a good job with telling that story. It's a very heartbreaking story, but like I said, it's very eye-opening, especially into the mental health care system and how even today they don't get the support that they need in order to properly help these people that are suffering from a mental illness. I would highly recommend this, especially if you are someone that's kind of like interested, like I am, into like different mental illnesses. This is a great story to check out. I took a lot away from this. You can't tell, but I ended up tabbing up a lot in here. Again, there was just like a lot of good information that I took away from this. So I would highly recommend this. And this is the only book that I have talked about that I have given 5 stars. So check this one out if you think it's interesting. So those are all of my surprising reads for 2024. Again, if you guys want to check out my first video as a part of my end of the year series, I will have that video linked down below. But please let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you have read any of these. And if you have any surprising reads from 2024, let me know that as well. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.